Let me read to you the letter that I got from one person, one of the person on our platform, that confirms the need for this particular topic. Hello, DSA. I thank God for giving you the courage to confront the evils in the Nigerian churches in particular and Africa in general. This is a fulfillment of what God told me in 2014, which I shared with a pastor, that God said there are much victims and church survivors, and He will rescue them all. God has raised you to start the rescue operations of God's people in the continent of Africa. God, who has started this good work, will complete it in Jesus' name. Stay blessed, my pastor. Now, this is a confirmation of what we are talking about, that people know this, people know about this. Now, I don't know who wrote this letter, but he's confirming the fact that there are a lot of people that are damaged in churches, and that we should pay attention to this, that this is a big problem that needs to be addressed. And so let's start by describing what is religious abuse, what is spiritual abuse or religious abuse. How will we describe religious abuse? Let's go ahead and see and have a look here. Okay, religious abuse is the mistreatment of a person by someone in a position of spiritual authority, resulting in the diminishing of that person's sense of well-being and growth, spiritually and emotionally. So I want you to pay attention to a number of things in that description. I think maybe some of you might want to keep it on. So you see, religious abuse is the mistreatment of a person by someone in a position of spiritual authority. If it is just simply abuse, it will just be by someone in a position of authority. But in this case, we are talking about church and spiritual and religious experiences. So we are talking about pastors, GOs, or leaders, home group leaders, just somebody who has a position of spiritual authority. Now, when a person in a position of spiritual authority mistreats another person, resulting that will leading to the person that is being mistreated to have diminishing of that person's sense of well-being and growth, both spiritually and emotionally, that is what we call spiritual abuse. So spiritual abuse is when someone who is a leader or a pastor or somebody who is standing on top of another, who has a position of authority, is mistreating someone else that is under his supervision. And, especially when he's using his authority to suppress that person. So that is why the form of Christianity and the form of Pentecostalism that is now being practiced in Nigeria, that you must submit, you must not question, you must not query, that by itself is an abuse. So if you go to a church where you cannot question anything in that church, you cannot question the doctrine, you cannot question the authority, you cannot question the practices, you cannot question the man of God that is there. If you cannot question and you are just told to submit and listen, that on its own is already an abuse. So if you look at it from that perspective, you discover that all of us have been abused, and we too have abused other people. So this is not a message to point an accusing finger at other people. We should all repent. We should all get healing by repenting, by confessing to God, to ourselves, maybe to others if we need to, and by learning how to move on, and also learning how to not to wound other people. Most of us who have participated in inflicting abuse and injury and wounds on other people is because we are also listening to our so-called leaders or authority figures who tell us to do what we are doing. So we go ahead and tell people to behave in a certain way because that is what the order in this church is. If you are a part of the usher group in the church, it's most likely you have also inflicted abuse and injury on some people. If you are a part of a leadership, maybe in the choir leader, or or you are part of the people who collect money from people, that could be an abuse, because that is what you were told to do, and you just did what you were told to do. The reason why I'm talking about us all being culprits is because I don't want us to begin to say the other guy is to blame, this one is to blame, that we are pointing accusing finger at other people. No, we are all to blame. So we are not looking for people to blame here. We are all guilty, and we should just learn to bring health and healing to our African churches or Pentecostal denominations, that or to church in general. That church should not be a place where people go to be damaged, because people are being damaged right now. So if you go to a church and you cannot question anything, remember that is the number one step in damage. That means your damaging has started. When you cannot question, when you cannot query, when you cannot challenge, when you cannot express your own opinion, that is already an abuse. And that is the first form of abuse that we all encounter when we go to these churches, especially when you go to even in our homes, even in our homes. This is not just in these Pentecostal churches, but even in our houses. A lot of our parents would not even allow us to say anything. A lot of our parents would not even allow you to question your parents, or to ask them questions, or to challenge anything, or thought, or to contribute anything. So that is already an atmosphere of abuse. And the person that is being abused will also abuse another person, because that's the only thing he knows. So, for example, you notice that a son that grew up being beaten, or being that was abused, will now go ahead and abuse his own children, even though he had vowed that he will never do that, but he will still do it, because that's the only model that he has been exposed to. So the problem we have in our churches in Africa is that all these pastors that are breaking out from other churches, breaking out and starting their own churches, the only thing they have been exposed to is that same abusive system. So because they have been abused, and that's the only thing they know, that's the form of church they know, they come out of those churches and go ahead and begin to repeat the same thing they said they will never do, the same thing they complain about, the same thing that they complained that they didn't like, is that the same thing they will begin to do. They might even be doing worse than the churches that they had left. So that's why we are talking about this openly now. But when they tell you that you cannot talk, you shouldn't criticize, you shouldn't say anything, that in itself is an abuse. So from what I've said so far, I think you would have known and discovered that means we have an abusive culture. It means that the whole culture of our churches is abusive. It means we have an abusive culture, because if this is the case, if this is the situation that we all grew up in, if our whole culture is telling us that you cannot challenge anything, that you just have to be quiet and don't challenge a leader or an elder, it means people are hiding, or people are having to put up with wounds and damages and injuries that are destroying them, but they cannot do anything about it. They cannot even go to psychologists, because even if you don't have to talk about it or protest, but if it is in the Western world, you could at least go to a psychologist and consult and be, and have somebody listen to you and be rehabilitated. But the way things are in Africa, there are even enough psychologists to be able to, minister to you, or to be able to listen to you. So you don't even know what is happening. And this will lead to depression. This will lead to oppression. And then when you begin to have indications of oppression or depression, they'll begin to tell you that you are demon possessed. And that whole process of deliverance and demon possession by itself, they call it deliverance, but it's an abusive atmosphere itself. So if you have seen some of the videos that we showed, how people are being delivered and deliverance sessions and healing sessions, all those things, you will see that is another process of abuse. So someone who was abused and got into damages and wounds and breaking point, And now they told him he has the answer for him is deliverance, and he goes to that deliverance, and it's another process of abuse. So African Christians are going through a lot, and these teachings are so important to set people free. Okay, let's look at this next point I'm making here. Abusive Christian leaders typically do not intend to hurt people. Now, some of you people might not agree with this, and you might say this is not true, but the reason why I said this is because I personally am a pastor. And even though I'm not acting like a pastor so as such on Facebook, but I have a congregation. I've planted over 2,700 churches in my lifetime, and not just me. This is our church, Embassy of God, and we have many branches, many churches. I'm a pastor, and I'm what people call GO, right? I'm a founder of a church. Yeah, but maybe I should correct myself. If I say abusive Christian leaders typically do not intend to hurt people, well, I'm talking of, maybe I should rather talk about myself. Yeah, maybe I should reverse that. Maybe I should take my word back. Maybe I should rather talk about myself. When I say abusive Christian leaders typically don't intend to hurt people, I think I should rather talk about myself. But with maybe I just want to believe that most Christian pastors probably don't want to be abusive. But the bottom line is that a lot of them get to be abusive at the end of the day. But I still want to think that their intention was not like that. I think what leads to the abusive attitude from pastors and Christian leaders is probably their trainings. Most of them have been trained in atmospheres and environments where they themselves were abused, or where what they have been exposed to is an abusive relationship, or what they have witnessed, what they call church, or what they call normal relationship is actually an abuse. For example, if you go to a church, for example, there is let me just tell you, let me give you this example. There is a church in Nigeria, for example. I will not mention the name of the church this time, but there are many churches like this, whereby okay, for example, let me mention, there is a church in Nigeria they call Deeper Life Christian Church. Recently, the pastor of Deeper Life Christian Church, Pastor Kumuyi, no, maybe it was not the one really, but his church released a video where somebody was asking him, a single lady, about all the stringent measures that were established in that particular church for Christian ladies, which has led to a situation whereby a lot of these Christian ladies have remained spinsters, like 50-year-old, 60-year-olds virgins. They have remained like virgins forever. They have remained spinsters that never dated anybody. They never had anybody to date them, and they never dated anyone. And then that is one area, that is one aspect. And the thing that the pastor was able to say is that is what I knew that time. Then there is another question that was asked him about, okay, the sister that are even married now. And most of them, even though they are the same Deeper Life, they are having marital challenges, marital issues. And the reason they have marital issues is because past Deeper Life Church would not allow them to see each other, to date. Even after engagement, they will not be able to date. So they don't know each other practically by the time they marry. So by the time they marry, they are strangers to each other. And they live like that, a life of suffering. And this is because of the church, because of the rules of the church. So a lot of lives have been damaged like that. Then their children don't want to go to church again. because they have seen what their parents have done and the kind of experiences they had. So damages in generations, into generations. So it's an abuse, but I would not probably think that Pastor Kumuyi had intended to damage or abuse people. But he had ended up doing it because that was the system that he adopted from whatever church he was going to, or whatever method or model of church that he copied. So there are a lot of situations like that. In that same church, can you believe it that they would not allow a lady to have makeup? They will not allow you to have a makeup. Can you come? The way you are right now, you will not be good enough. You cannot be a member of Deeper Life Church. You have a few problems. The first problem you have is your ear. You see, yeah, this your hair, yeah, that your hair. You cannot leave your ear open like this in Deeper Life. You cannot. You have to get something over your head and cover your head and put your hair and put everything inside. That is an abuse. Even though most people in that church and in Africa would not call it an abuse, but it's an abuse. They compel you psychologically. They break you psychologically to become like that. It is not your natural choice to go with your hair cover everywhere. You are a lady. You are a young woman. But they compel you to do that. That is your number one sin, right? Okay, Olena. You have another sin. Your number two sin, you see those your earrings, beautiful earrings you have? Can you touch one of them? Yeah, those your earrings? I'm sorry. If you go to that church, you have to remove it. Now, what does that have what does that have to do with salvation? It doesn't have anything to do. It's an abusive system. It's an abuse. But they make you, when religion compels you to, subdue you and compel you to adopt a certain lifestyle of dressing or look, or it's an abuse. But I'm sure that these pastors don't intend to abuse initially. Now, another sin you see that your lipstick. Yeah, lipstick, you read? You don't do that when you go to that church. If you do that, you are a sinner. You might not go to heaven. You see, but those things might be funny right now. But these are things that thousands or maybe millions of people in Africa are subjugated to. Even if you are a man, you want to marry, you cannot see your wife normally. You cannot see her normal hair. You cannot see. You just get what you just get what they give you. So a lot of damages, a lot of abuse is going on under the name of church in Africa. And these are just the little things. So what I'm trying to say today, thank you, Elena. What I'm trying to say today is that a lot of these Christian leaders might not really have intended, these Christian leaders, maybe typically they do not intend to hurt people, but they are really hurting people. They are hurting them and they are damaging their future and their lives and their destiny just because of one rule or the other, because of one demand or the other. That is happening all over the place. Not just in Deeper Life, it's happening all over the place. So a lot of damage. People are crippled, and a lot of women will never marry like that. A lot of women will never have social life, and some of these churches will actually go to the extent of telling you to come to church every day. You have to come to Monday is one program, Tuesday is another program, Thursday is another program. Every day you have to be in church. That is an abuse too. That's an abuse. So a lot of things that people count to be normal in Africa is an abusive system. Hello everybody, DSA here. I would like us to spread this word together. Let the gospel of the kingdom conquer the world. We only need you to help us take 5 simple steps. What are these steps? 1, go ahead and like the video, please, if you have not yet done that. Number 2, we need you to subscribe to this channel. Have you yet subscribed? You not yet done it? Go do it now. Number 3, you need to press and click on that bell. You see the bell there? That will give you notification of every video that we do. Then the next thing you need to do, write your comments. Let's know what you think, good or bad. And then of course you have other platforms like Instagram, like Facebook. Share this video on your other platforms. All right? Let's win the world for Christ. Peace.